turn it over to Ms. Pilati.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Tussey. Thank you everyone for being here this evening. Just to talk a little bit about the budget for this year. Welcome to our first budget workshop. This is 104. We wanted to start off just by talking a little bit about some of our district priorities. You know, the entire budget process, we'd love to be interactive. We'd invite you to join us for all of our workshops. Reach out, ask questions throughout. As we'll see in any budget process, there will be challenges, there will be priorities we have to make, and there will also be some exciting new opportunities for our students as we proceed through the year. So just in terms of these 6 priorities, we really want to think about the whole concept behind, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We want our students to feel safe and supported in our buildings first and foremost. That's one of the most important things before any successful learning can take place, we know. We also see as our second priority our instructional program and making continuous improvements there. You'll see throughout the budget process mainly some discussions about strengthening our literacy program, career and technical education, computer science and digital fluency, things like that that our students need to be successful in the coming years. Also, the spaces that we learn in need to evolve. You know, the traditional settings that we see in our core academic classrooms and also in some of our special area classrooms may not have the same needs that they did, you know, 20, 30 years ago. We'll see that in some of our classrooms like facts or business or in our science classrooms and those sort of things. Also, professional development aligned to our district goals. Our district goals are posted on our website. If you'd like to review them, our professional development would be aligned to those goals that we've identified. Also, some buildings and facility improvements that you'll hear about through the workshops. And we really, again, want to enhance our parent engagement and collaboration. So attending these workshops, reaching out to us for questions, coming up and asking questions throughout the process, we really welcome that. And we'll look to build more opportunities in throughout the school year to welcome our parents into the process. So I know Mrs. Pilati is going to get into some of the more specifics of the budget, and I'll pass it off to her at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Romali. Good evening, everyone. On January 21st, Governor Hochul presented her proposal for the 2025-26 Executive State Budget. Overall, the executive budget proposal will increase school aid by $1.7 billion over the current 24-25 levels. The aid increase consists of a $1.5 billion increase in foundation aid with several key changes to that funding formula. There has been an almost year-long process with the Rockefeller Institute and their foundation aid study. The governor chose 2 of those items from that study to include in the executive budget proposal, and they are both related to the poverty measurements in the foundation aid formula. The first recommendation is to replace the now 25-year-old Census 2000 poverty data with small area income and poverty estimates. The free and reduced price lunch data metric will also be replaced with SED's economically disadvantaged data. Other recommended changes to the formula include a modification to the state sharing ratio. Thankfully, the Save Harmless provision has been maintained again this year, and there is also a minimum increase of 2% for all districts in foundation aid. West Islip is a Save Harmless district, so we did see a 2% increase in our foundation aid. Unfortunately, overall, our initial state aid projection is showing a decrease in aid of approximately $312,000. Now, that is different than what you will see in Newsday because we actually have to recalculate our building aid. So our building aid gets recalculated and the decrease is not as high as they're projecting. They're projecting, I think in Newsday, about $800,000. But the actual decrease right now is about $300,000. Consistent with previous years, our budget goals are to maintain a budget that's fiscally responsible and operationally efficient. We always strive to maintain and enhance our programs for students and services that we provide while staying within the tax cap. Maintaining financial transparency is another important goal. We always make several documents available on our district website, such as the annual auditor's report, both internal and external audit. We have monthly financial statements available. The district's reserve plan is on the website, as well as our transparency reports that are required by SED. As we go through this budget process, various documents and presentations will also be available on the website. Tonight's presentation is actually available already on the website. Tonight is the first of 4 budget workshops in which the board and the administration will publicly discuss the budget development. Each year, the budget development process starts in the fall. We always analyze budget trends and estimate various renewal rates based on historical data and industry projections. A common example is health insurance rates. They actually change every January 1, which is a calendar year. So for the last 6 months of the fiscal year of 25-26, from January through June, that health insurance rate will remain unknown. So that will be an estimate in our budget. The district considers changes in contractual obligations. In early December, our administrators submit their budgets to central office, and we review the budgets and hold several meetings with those administrators to go over the proposed budgets. Central office goes through various versions of the budget line by line. We continually review district staffing needs and hold staffing meetings and evaluate existing programs and services that are offered throughout the district during the budget process. As I mentioned, in January, the governor released her proposal for the executive budget. The board discusses various components of the budget during the budget workshops in February and March. And in April, the state-approved budget is released and the board will adopt the budget. In May, we are required to hold a budget hearing. And of course, most importantly, on May 20th, everyone will be voting on the annual budget. Since the tax cap was enacted in 2012, this is the budget formula now. First, you're required, every district is first required to calculate the restricted tax levy. Then they have to add in any anticipated state aid. Unfortunately for us right now, that's looking like a decrease for state aid. Any other revenues that they expect to earn, any appropriated fund balance, and any reserves that they expect to use. And the sum of all of those is what your expenditure budget can be. The tax levy limit became effective for school districts starting back in 2012-13 school year. The tax levy limit allows a district to increase their property tax levy from one year to the next by 2% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less. The calculation is based on a multi-step formula that's provided by the comptroller's office. And since there are adjustments and exclusions, the same formula that's used by every district will yield different results for each district. If a district chooses to tax at a higher rate than the percentage that's derived from that calculation, that's considered piercing the tax cap. And a supermajority would be required by the voters to pass that tax cap. West Islip has never pierced the cap before. This calculation is actually a permanent part of our budget process now, and this calculation is due to New York State by March 1st. This is West Islip's calculation. You start off with your prior year tax levy. That $93.4 million is the amount of property taxes that are levied by the district for the 24-25 school year. You then multiply that by a tax-based growth factor. That is simply a year-to-year increase in the full value of taxable real property in your district. It's usually due to growth in full value from new construction or additions and improvements to real property. That factor will never ever be less than 1. So for us, it's pretty low, it's 1.0014. We then add in any pilots that are receivable in the school year. So pilots stand for payments in lieu of taxes. Certain commercial property owners will enter into a pilot agreement with the town to make annual payments instead of their property taxes for a negotiated period of time. We only have one pilot agreement in this town, and it is a veterinary office on Sunrise Highway. We then subtract out the taxes that are levied to pay for any local capital costs. That's the $2.2 million, and that is anything necessary to maintain your district facilities, including debt service payments, your local share of capital expenditures made by BOCES, as well as this is also net of building aid and transportation aid. You then multiply all of this by the allowable tax levy growth factor. That factor is the one that's the lesser of 2% or the change in the CPI. So the change in CPI this year was actually pretty low since comparing to the last couple of years. It was 2.95%. So the allowable levy growth factor is capped at 2% this year. We then subtract out the pilots that we're expecting for next year, and that gives us our tax levy before exclusions. And then you again have to add in your local capital costs that you're expecting for the following year, which is at 3.1 million. So finally, your end result is your allowable tax levy limit. That's the 96.2 million. So we are looking to levy taxes for the 25-26 school year of 96.2 million, or an increase of 3.07%. One of our basic budget goals is, of course, to have a balanced budget where our revenues equal our expenses. However, the district does face several challenges throughout the budget process. As I mentioned, health insurance rates for every calendar year change as of January 1st, and we're on a fiscal year. So we have to estimate what we think the last 6 months will be. We did have a historically low increase in health insurance rates for the 25 school year. However, the second half of 26 is unexpected, and we're not sure what it will be. So we're right now estimating an increase of about 10%. Our district insurance through NYSER is estimated to increase about 12% for next year. ERS pension rates will have an average increase from 15.5 to 17%. Our first draft of the budget does show that our expenses are significantly higher than our anticipated revenues. However, of course, the budget process is just in the beginning phases. We're not yet complete. We have looked to reduce any controllable costs, and we will be maximizing the use of our available reserves to help balance our budget. The Board of Education also recently offered a retirement incentive to our teaching staff. The district will be notified of any anticipated retirements by March 3rd, so future drafts of our budget may include more retirements, which will help us address the budget gap that we're currently facing. For 2025-26, we will actually have 3 board trustee seats open, and the nominating petitions for those seats will be available at district office on March 3rd. Our next 3 budget work sessions will take place on March 11th, March 25th, and April 10th in the Beach Street Auditorium here. We will be discussing curriculum and instruction on March 11th, buildings and grounds, school safety on March 25th, and the final proposed budget on April 10th. Nominating petitions for the board trustee seats are due back to the district office by April 21st. We are required to adopt our budget by April 23rd, and our public budget hearing will take place on May 6th. Our budget vote will take place on May 20th in the high school gymnasium. That's all I have. Does anyone have any questions regarding the presentation? Or I know you received your first draft of the budget and your budget binders, so.
Just want to confirm.
Sure.
You said a 2% increase in foundation aid, which equals a $300,000 decrease.
So the aid that the district receives primarily is foundation aid, but there's also expense-based aids. So while we are looking at an increase in foundation aid of approximately $520,000, there's other areas, for example, excess cost aid. That's related specifically to special education costs. So that's usually out of our control. We're looking at a decrease there. And our building aid that we have recalculated is still decreasing about $700,000. And the building aid is simply a matter of timing of when different projects fall off. So we get aid for 15 years for each project. And just the way the timing has worked with our bonds historically, we had quite a few drop off fairly recently.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have questions? Okay, thank you.